Picture yourself mid-sentence, finally locked into deep, effortless focus. Then, a tiny buzz in your pocket breaks the silence. Neurological research confirms the brain cannot process two complex information streams at once. Instead, it performs context switching, a rapid, exhausting process of stopping, reorienting, and reloading information every time your focus shifts. This process is constrained by the strict limits of working memory. The human brain holds just 4 pieces of information simultaneously. When a notification forces its way in, the brain must dump loaded data to make room for the new stimulus. The split-second distraction triggers a structural collapse of the cognitive architecture you spent the last hour building. Leftover thoughts from the interrupted task continue to linger long after you put the phone away. Psychologists call this attention residue, a phenomenon where previous mental models continue to consume bandwidth while you try to engage with a new activity. UC Irvine data shows it takes over 23 minutes to rebuild cognitive momentum after a single 5-second interruption. Throughout the day, these innocent pings create overlapping recovery zones, consuming up to 40% of available productive time in an 8-hour workday. This massive loss of time reveals a deeper issue: the immense metabolic strain placed on the nervous system by constantly forced task switching. That strain begins the moment your phone makes a sound. Through the acoustic startle response, auditory pings bypass the rational prefrontal cortex to strike the brainstem, triggering a biological reaction in under 200 milliseconds. UI designers reinforce this reaction using salience bias. By choosing the color red for notification badges, apps exploit the brain's innate evolutionary association with danger and urgency. These sensory cues push the brain into System 1 thinking, the fast, intuitive, and emotional state that compels you to act before you have the chance to rationally evaluate if the alert is important. Modern tech companies have weaponized our prehistoric survival instincts to command our attention for profit. This capture is sustained by dopamine. While often associated with pleasure, dopamine is actually the molecule of anticipation and seeking, driving the motivation to investigate a stimulus rather than the satisfaction of the reward itself. The uncertainty of a notification, whether it contains a social reward or a mundane spam, creates a state of intermittent reinforcement. This unpredictable feedback loop generates a more powerful behavioral pull than a guaranteed reward, mimicking the mechanics of a slot machine. Combining these unpredictable rewards with specific auditory cues forms a deep Pavlovian conditioning loop within the user. This process relies on the same biological principles discovered by foundational researcher Ivan Pavlov. Pavlov proved that by consistently ringing a bell before providing food, he could trigger an involuntary biological response at the sound alone. The modern smartphone chime utilizes the exact same neurological hardware. Compulsive phone checking signals that you are trapped inside a highly engineered behavioral experiment, optimized specifically to maximize your seeking reflex. This state of constant seeking creates phantom vibrations, where the nervous system becomes so hypervigilant for dopamine cues that it begins hallucinating tactile sensations. This diagram tracks the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal, or HPA, axis. When your brain perceives the urgency of a digital alert, it activates this pathway and releases cortisol, the primary stress hormone, into your bloodstream. Perpetual anticipation traps the body in a cycle of chronic, low-grade stress, making true physiological relaxation nearly impossible. The ultimate cost of this cycle is the biological conditioning of our stress response, transforming a communication tool into an internal anxiety engine. This crisis stems from a fundamental mismatch between ancient human neurobiology and a hyper-accelerated digital environment. Defending the prefrontal cortex against persuasive design requires environmental restructuring, such as adopting default do not disturb settings or grayscale screen modes. Recognizing this biological manipulation is the first step to reclaiming cognitive autonomy. This technology does not need to be loud or physically imposing to control human behavior. It merely exploits our biology with the smallest possible signal.